Welcome back to the Malt Miller YouTube channel, folks, and today we're talking about how to control your fermentation temperature using the new GC2 from Grainfather. I'm James, this is Martin, and today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the new GC2 glycol chiller from Grainfather. But first off, Martin, why is it so important that we control the temperature of our fermentation when we're brewing our own beer at home?
James, when you're fermenting, the number one thing that can cause off flavours is stressing the yeast.
Yep.
So having it in the right environment, so you're giving it nutrients, you're giving it the sugars it wants to feed on, making sure the temperature is where it operates at its finest is really, really important.
Especially after you've spent all of that time brewing your beer on brew day, to then not show a similar level of care and attention to the fermentation. I mean, come on, it's got to be done, right?
Yeah, make sure you have the right amount of yeast, but make sure it's treated and used at the correct temperature. Going a little bit too high or a little too cold or having spikes, it'll stress it and you'll get these off flavours. It'll vary from different types of yeast, but you know, you'll get that homebrew twang sometimes if you don't control it, or you'll get that kind of like real eggy kind of, it'll get really estery. You can get a number of different off flavours and faults with your beer from just not taking the care of looking after your yeast.
In some cases, Martin, if the temperature that you're fermenting out goes too far outside of the range that your yeast is happy with, you can actually kill the yeast off and end up with a stuck fermentation, which causes, you know, numbers of problems, right?
Yeah, definitely. You know, there's a number of different ways you can control the temperature of your fermentation. We've done a video that shows how to build a simple fermentation fridge.
Yep, using a temperature controller, a fridge, you know, that you could buy secondhand, and like a heat mat or a heat belt or a heat tube, right?
You know, it's really easy and accessible to do that, and it's a great starting step. But as you kind of progress in your brewing career, you want to kind of raise the stakes a little bit and gain a little bit more control. Well,
and also, if you want to have more than one fermenter on the go as well.
Yeah, I mean, you will want to start brewing more often, whether you're drinking more often, it doesn't matter. Beers that take a little bit of different time to actually ferment as well. You might be trying to do some lagering. So having that control over two fermenters is a great idea.
Well, lager's a really good shout actually, because you need a very stable fermentation temperature. And then when you move on to that conditioning phase, you need a really stable and cold temperature, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, that can take, you know, 3 months, maybe sat in the fermenter.
If you like a bit of Budvar like I do, yeah.
You don't want your fermenters being completely tied up for that full amount of time. So having a second fermenter, definitely, that's where it can come in handy.
Yeah, so really your next step after the fridge is looking at glycol chillers. Now, glycol chillers are perceived as being quite expensive and a bit of a luxury, but with this new product, this makes it a lot more accessible. I mean, just look at the size of it.
I know, right? We were just talking now about this compared to its bigger brother, the GC4, and we'll come on to some of the differences between the two in a minute. But this is significantly smaller, right?
Right. So height-wise, this is 583 versus 656
millimeters. Yeah.
Millimeters. Yeah. So significantly shorter than its bigger brother. It's like a little square. So it's like 320 square, but with the attachments on the back, which you connect all your tubes and your controllers, you're then looking at extending it out to like 363 in terms of depth.
Yeah.
And that's versus 450 on its bigger brother on the GC4, and that's like a 390 square.
Right, okay, wow. So yeah, it's significantly smaller. We're looking at sort of 25% smaller in most directions, yeah? And, you know, it's just such a nice, cute little design as well, isn't it?
It's just nicely packaged, you know? It's pretty smart looking. It looks really easy to look after.
Yeah, nice stainless steel design, clean wipe down panels.
It's on wheels as well. You've got lockable front casters. I don't want to sound a little bit weird, but it's a kind of cute looking.
It is,
you know?
yeah. It's like a droid out of Star Wars, isn't it?
It is. It's like a little R2-D2.
So that's the dimensions covered. What else is different between this and the bigger GC4?
Well, let's just keep it simple. The name says it all. GC2 means it's got 2 channels.
Yep.
You can hook up 2 fermenters. GC4, 4 channels, hook up 4 fermenters.
Okay, I get that, and actually I see why now this has been brought out, because for most homebrewers, you know, 2 fermenters is that sweet spot between the amount of time that you have available to brew at home and maybe, like we said, having something in the tank that's lagering or taking a little bit longer. What does that translate to in terms of kind of price point variance between the two models?
Well, actually, James, this is about a third less. You've still got all the same operational features, just doing 2 channels. It's still got a tank, it's slightly smaller because of the 2 channels, but otherwise everything else inside there does the same job as the 4.
Now, Martin, this is obviously a product that's been made and developed by Grainfather, so I understand it's going to be designed to work with their products, right?
Its perfect place is working next to a Grainfather Conical. You know, that's what it's designed to do. But there are a number of accessories that make this accessible to be able to use it with any fermenter, from the plastic bucket to a jacketed Uni Tank.
Now we're going to grab a few different fermenter options and see exactly how we can hook these up, right?
Yeah, let's take a closer look at it.
So we're going to start off by talking you through the simplest and most kind of out of the box ready solution, which is the Grainfather GF30 Conical Fermenter, right, Martin?
It's the one you expect to use this product with.
Yeah.
So to use this with the GC2, it's very simple. It's very much like the GC4. You need to get the connection kit.
Yeah.
Because this is sold with or without the connection kit. You also need a bottle of glycol if you don't buy it with the glycol.
Yeah.
Okay. Simply in here, you get the brass connectors which you connect onto the side of your GF.
Yeah, they just screw in, don't they? Yeah.
With the GF, you also get the power cable which hooks it up to this.
Yeah.
Okay. But then in the connection kit, you've got your insulated tubing, which will simply push onto the barbs on the back of the chiller. Yeah. And then it connects onto the brass fittings on the side.
And then in terms of power, you're right, all we have to do is the connector cable that comes with the GF30, there's a little screw in the back, which you screw it into, and that then connects onto the back into the channel for which channel on the glycol chiller you want to use, right?
Yeah, and the pumps are built into the chiller. Yeah. You know, they're not a separate thing that you have to drop in like some other chillers. It's all built into here, and that will then tell this to switch the pump on and pump the glycol when it needs it.
The power cable relays directly to the control box, the heater, and the pump that's in here to do all of that temperature control, and you then control it by the panel on the front.
Or on your phone.
Yeah, via the app. Next up, for those of you that want even more capacity within your fermentation, we're going to take a look at one of Grainfather's other fermenters. Now, this is my personal favourite fermenter, and it's not just because it's blocking my view of you, Martin. It's because this is the perfect fermenter for anybody looking to brew really big batches at an accessible price. This is the Grainfather SF70. They do 2 options, don't they? They do this and a 50.
Yes.
And they're designed to work directly with their larger brewing systems. So if you're using the G40, the SF50 is designed to work straight kind of comparison with that
same
product.
with the G70 and the SF70.
Yeah. But what this actually represents is a quite familiar kind of unjacketed stainless steel fermenter that you'll find from loads of different manufacturers actually, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of different products similar in this kind of use on the market. Yeah. And the way that we're going to hook this up is exactly the same. And it's all about the magic that's in that box there.
It is. So this box here is the GCA, which is the glycol chiller adapter kit that Grainfather sells separately. And we'll take a little bit of a look inside this box, because actually what this box represents is that bridge between all the other fermenters that we may have already or maybe thinking of purchasing and this glycol chiller or the GC4, the bigger brother.
Yeah, and this is why you can buy the glycol chiller without the connector kit to the GF30. Yeah. Because not everybody is going to be using a GF30. You can use pretty much any fermenter available. So
inside the box here, we've got a couple of things which I'm going to talk through. First and foremost, we have our connection hoses for the glycol chiller, which are exactly the same as the ones we've shown you previously. They just don't have the brass fittings on the end that connect to the GF30 fermenter. So those will just hook up on the barbs on the back of the chiller. Yeah. We have stainless steel chiller coil. Now, this you can see actually is in the top of the fermenter here through the bung in the top of the, by the airlock, and actually sits down through the lid and hangs inside the fermenter. That's how we pump the glycol through the hoses, through the chiller coil. That's how we chill everything that we've got in our fermenter. Now, you might be thinking about heating. This comes with a really cool heat mat actually, and some little Velcro adapters that Velcro onto the cone at the bottom of the fermenter. And that's how we then provide heat. If you were using another fermenter, you might put it onto the side. Really depends on what you're going to be using, but that's how we heat things, and it does a really good job. We've used this actually with this fermenter quite a few times, and it's fantastic. I think the fact it's Velcro is a really nice touch, because then that means you can move it from product to product. So you've got different fermenters on the go. There's a few other little bits and pieces. There's like the rubber bung for the airlock, some little Jubilee clips for tightening the hoses onto whatever you're using it with, and the bungs for the hoses as well, so that when you're not using them, you don't end up with glycol everywhere. The final thing... This is the bit I'm excited about. Now, this is in this box here, this is really where the magic comes in. We have here a small independent version of the Wi-Fi control box that's on the front of the GF30.
Yeah, it's very similar in the same way as that it's Wi-Fi connection.
Yep.
So you can operate it with the Grainfather app, but you can also then use it with any other product.
This then connects to the heater mat via the connections on the back. It also connects to the glycol chiller itself to do the controlling of the pump and
so it
managing
tells
the
it when it
temperature.
needs to be chilling.
Yep, and it also comes with a plug-in temperature probe that plugs in, which you can then feed into a thermal well on your fermenter, so you get an accurate temperature reading.
So if you look at what you've got there, James, you've essentially got heat, cold, connecting liquid, connecting power, connecting pump,
And Wi-Fi control.
And Wi-Fi control. So you can now start to put together ideas of how you can use this with other fermenters.
Should we take a look at some other fermenters that you could use this with?
I think we definitely should, so that people can get the same kind of idea. Because in some situations, you may not want to use all of the parts of this kit, but they shouldn't stop you from thinking about using this and this with your fermenter.
Next on our journey through fermentation heaven, Martin, we're taking a look at our soon to be arriving fermenter. Talk us through really quickly a little bit about this.
Right, so this is our new 30-litre Conical Fermenter. This is arriving in the middle of 2023.
Yeah, and it's going to be Malt Miller branded.
Malt Miller branded. There's two versions. One of them has a lid where you have a bung.
Yep, for an airlock,
Yeah, just standard kind of lid. And this one, which is our Pro model, actually comes with a coil.
Yes, so we've got
on
a
the
chiller
lid.
coil and a really long thermal well.
And a long thermal well, yeah. With this, we can connect to the GCA very simply. We don't actually need this, so I'm going to take this away.
Okay, yeah, because we've already got a chiller coil there. Yeah.
You can get some John Guest fittings, which
Yeah.
you can then connect up to this.
Which I actually have here, and I'm going to
Fantastic.
talk you through. So to connect this, we need a 1/2" BSP to 3/8 John Guest fitting, which we're going to screw one on each side. Next up, we have 3/8 elbows,
Yep.
and they push straight in as well. And this makes for such a neat little solution, because what we can then do is put into here 3/8 hose barbs,
Nice.
and guess what? Our connector hoses from the GCA kit that are going to go into the glycol chiller push straight onto there.
Fantastic. And you've got the little metal Jubilee clips so you can tighten it up and
Exactly.
secure it.
Yeah, the thermal well is really nice and deep on this, so we can put the temperature probe all the way to the bottom, so we're getting a really good reading of the temperature. And then on the bottom of the cone, or just across the back of the fermenter, we can attach the heat mat. And we have actually tried this a number of times recently with this little fermenter while it's been in its trial phase with us, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, you've just literally made Rob keg a beer so we could do this
Yeah,
video.
I have. Yeah, there was up until about half an hour ago, there was beer in here.
Right, so in exactly the same way that we're doing this, where else can we go? What other fermenters can we use this with?
Well, now we've explored a little bit about the adaptability using other connections, I think we should take it right up as far as we can now. Let's take a look at what I've got lined up next.
Cool. So James, why don't you explain what you got here? Because you seem to have gone well above what I expected you to come along with.
Okay, well, this is definitely one that you know, I wanted to take a look at today, because this is an F80 Uni Tank from Brew Tools, right? Now, it doesn't have to be a Brew Tools fermenter or Uni Tank for this to work, but the point here is that if you have a jacketed fermenter or Uni Tank that uses tri-clamp ports to connect to your glycol chiller, you can do it with this, right?
Okay.
So I've got the hoses here, and all we need to be able to do this is the right size TC adapter. So this is a 1.5" tri-clamp to 10mm barb, and that pushes straight on to our glycol hose.
That's the hoses that came with the GCA.
Yep. So we have to put one on each side, so one on the hot and one on the cold, because remember, we've got cold glycol going in and warmer glycol coming out whenever we're doing this.
Yep.
We then just need our tri-clamps and the silicone gasket, and it's dead easy to connect these. Now, what's always important to remember with these fermenters, and this is actually across all the range, is that your cold in the cold glycol going in.
So this is the stuff that's coming from the chiller.
Should be at the bottom of wherever you're pumping, and the warmer one at the top because heat rises. And then you put the silicone seal on, connect with the tri-clamp. So now we've got a complete solution for cooling our wort inside our monstrous Uni tank. You might be thinking about how are we going to manage the temperature? Well, especially on the Brew Tools ones, you've got 1,000,001 different tri-clamp ports which you can fit a thermal well onto. And actually on this one, it's just down at the bottom here. So we'd feed our temperature probe into there.
From the GCA.
Yeah. And then in terms of heating, again, the little Velcro on heat mat, we just fit at the bottom of the cone.
Because we know it's single wall.
Yeah, underneath the jacket, because the jacket on this runs around the middle. And then we will be able to warm our fermenting beer in here perfectly fine. We've had this on the SF70, which is obviously the biggest one Grainfather do, which does up to 70 litres, and it's been no problem at all. So there's no reason why it wouldn't work with something like this as well. So this is obviously at the very top end of the sort of system you can control. Now, as I said, any jacketed Uni tank or fermenter that uses tri-clamps for attaching your glycol hoses, this method will work with, okay? What we should do now though is take a look at completely the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, just to see what you can do, all right?
Yeah, like the idea of that.
Did you enjoy my way of connecting the GC2 up to an absolute monster of a fermenter there, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, that is going to one extreme. So I'm going to take it totally to the other and go away from your spendy fermenter to my little plastic bucket here.
We all love a plastic fermenter bucket, right?
We all start with them, you know? This is kind of where you start fermenting.
Yeah.
There is no limitation to what you can do with the GCA and what you can control. You can even do a plastic fermenter.
Okay, so how would we go about it?
So simply by cutting a 35mm hole in the lid, James, you can put the bung in here.
Yeah, like you would with an airlock.
Yeah, and this bung you then kind of put in the lid, pass the coil up through the bottom of the bung, then you put your heat pad on the side of the bucket.
Yeah, using the Velcro. Yeah.
Using the Velcro. The temperature probe, you could stick it to the side of the bucket, or you could even fit a thermal well to the bucket.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. No limitations as to that, is there?
And although this is a plastic bucket, it's demonstrating that you could use the GCA and a glycol chiller with any fermenter.
Yeah, yeah.
You just need to think about how you're going to drop the coil in with the bung, or with the coil already attached to it. Where am I going to stick my heat pad? It's limitless.
Yeah, and like you said, you just got to think through your challenges to end up with a solution that worked for you. And actually, as homebrewers, we love trying to fix a problem and come up with an ingenious solution for something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love your little tip of putting the John Guest fittings on the top of our 30 litre. I mean, you could even go further and put in their quick connectors.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few suppliers who supply those, so then you can just disconnect the chiller from the glycol.
Yeah. Come on then, Martin. Final thoughts as we wrap things up. What's your big takeaway from what we've just been through?
I suppose for me, it's kind of like we started off talking about fermentation control and how important that is, and then how nice this new little glycol chiller is.
Yeah, and it is like completely convenient and fits bang in the middle of, you know, where people would want in terms of the kit that they need as a home brewer.
For me, it's the GCA though that I've learnt a lot more about in this video. It's in terms of how adaptable it is and how it makes any fermenter accessible to the Grainfather Conical Fermenter range.
Yeah, and then beyond that, accessible to the Grainfather application, which is just so convenient for managing your fermentation throughout, right?
So it's kind of showing that actually, although these are branded Grainfather, they're actually for expanding the Grainfather range to many more users.
We're going to put links in the description below to all of the products that we've covered here in this video, including our stainless steel 30 litre fermenter. Join the waitlist on that so that you'll get notified as soon as it's in, and we'll be able to ship you one straight away. What really remains now though is we want to hear from you. If you have any cool solutions that you might have in mind where you've used the GCA kit, where you might see the GC2 fitting into your home brewing profile, tell us about it. We want to hear about it.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
You can also follow us on TikTok now. We're making a little tentative steps into the world of TikTok to see how we get on there. So if you are a user of that platform, go give us a follow.
Is that going to be little videos of you dancing?
Maybe. You have to wait and see, won't you?
Fabulous.
You have to download the app on your phone.
I'm going to have to give it a follow.
Look, we hope you've enjoyed the video, and please, as ever, have a great brew.